This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How we doing today? This is the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. The Alabama Crimson Tide on SI. You're watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody who is subscribed to us right there. You got some great footage on the Bama Central YouTube channel of the end of Alabama basketball practice today as the Crimson Tide got rolling over in Coleman Coliseum. So you can see that right there on the Bama Central YouTube channel if you're watching us right there. Or if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon, the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. We appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show right there as well. Going to have a lot of fun getting ready for Georgia coming into town. Coming into town for the biggest game of the college football season. Definitely the biggest game of the weekend. And we will get more in-depth into it today. We're going to talk about, what's my list? Okay, my overall thoughts on Georgia after watching Clemson and Kentucky. I watched it over again last night as I put out the cover for us right there at Alabama Crimson Tide on SI. This morning, kind of digesting and looking at a couple of things that Georgia did on film against Clemson and against Kentucky. Then we'll talk about Alabama's keys to the game. I got 3 keys to the game from my watching last night and from the article that I wrote this morning right there on BamaCentral.com. We'll talk about 3 Alabama players to watch. We've done that each and every Thursday before the game. 3 players to watch, 3 players we think are going to stand out or will have an important game this weekend. I got 3 guys standing out this weekend that you're going to want to watch and pay attention to. We're going to talk about the SEC injury report, Alabama and Georgia. Alabama participating for the first time, Georgia participating for the second time as they played Kentucky 2 weeks ago. But who's on the injury report? Why does it look rather suspicious or remarkable? We'll talk about that here as well, and then we'll wrap it up with a couple of Georgia players that make me nervous as we're entering the weekend right here at BamaCentral.com. So that's the game plan for the day. Overall thoughts on Georgia after watching the film over again last night. Alabama's keys to the game, Alabama's 3 players to watch, the injury report, and Georgia's players that make me nervous. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and tell you about my friends at Purple Turtle Roofing. They're the most reliable residential roof replacement company in Alabama and Mississippi. Whether it's addressing leaks, storm damage, or general wear and tear, Purple Turtle Roofing is going to be there to deliver exceptional roof repair for your property. Purple Turtle Roofing is the leading expert in local residential roof solutions, specializing in providing unparalleled service and quality craftsmanship for all your roof replacement needs. Call Dustin Foley and his team today at 877-PT-ROOF-5 for a free roof inspection. That's 877-787-6635. To schedule your appointment, and one of their qualified employees will come check out your roof for free and make sure you're prepared for all of life's storms. It seems like right here in West Alabama, the storms have passed us over. We're thinking about anybody that is being affected by hurricane. I think it's Helene is currently going through or is about to go through Florida and Georgia late tonight. So we hope that everybody stays safe if you are in the path or being affected by that. Make sure that you're prepared for those storms by calling Purple Turtle Roofing. You can visit them online at roofturtle.com. All right, so last night I got into the film again. You guys heard me yesterday talking to my father about the first couple of weeks of the Georgia season. Obviously, him coming from the Georgia perspective, and I really, really appreciate my dad giving me several minutes of his time to kind of go down memory lane on a couple of different things, and that was a lot of fun. You can listen to that or watch it on yesterday's episode. But I went back last night. I put the Clemson tape on. I downloaded the Kentucky tape, and I went by clip by clip by clip. What am I looking for? What can we take from these games that Alabama will use or Alabama can implement on Saturday? And I saw a couple of different things. A couple of things that stood out to me. First off, I mean, obviously everybody's mind immediately goes to the game in Lexington. Georgia struggling, beating them, 13-12. And so I'm looking at that game and I'm looking, what did Kentucky do? What did they do to get after the Georgia running game? What did they do to get Georgia into third and longs? Because that's going to be the key. The keys for this game, and we'll kind of marry two topics together as we get this started. My thoughts on Georgia film last night and Alabama's keys to the game. And really, for me, it's kind of obvious. Some of these keys are obvious. I wrote down stay on schedule, win the turnover battle, force Georgia into third and long. We'll take them from in reverse order right there as it kind of gets into the film. But Kentucky forces Georgia into multiple third and longs, and that's how they're able to stay in the game. They're able to frustrate them because they're able to get negative rushing plays throughout the game. Did all my clips go away? Oh, no, they're there. Perfect. For Kentucky, yeah. Where's my list right there? Okay, Klubnik, it's about deep passing. There's Georgia on third and long. There's quarterback run. There's running the football. Yeah, there you go. Georgia's offense. It was 3 of 13. 3 of 13 against both Clemson and Kentucky anytime they were in 3rd and 7 or longer. And what were they? They were 0 of 7, 0 of 6 against Kentucky. They ultimately ended up converting 3 of 7 or so against Clemson. And a couple of them went for big plays. Clemson stayed in the same. Clemson every time in 3rd and long stayed in the same dadgumper defense. And by the end of the game, they ended up throwing the 40-yard touchdown pass to London Humphreys on basically a crosser because Clemson's manned up on the outside. Georgia gets in a little bunch. They kind of get a rub route. They get some guys free for a couple big plays against Clemson for conversions. But really, you've got to get Georgia into 3rd and long situations on Saturday night, because if you do, that's how you can get off the field. If Georgia's in 3rd and 4, if Georgia sees 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, even 3rd and 5, you can do anything in your offense. You can run with Trevor Etienne. You can run with Nate Frazier. You can get some of these guys out on the edge. Dylan Bell, Dominic Lovett. I got those two last names mixed up. And Arian Smith. You can get those two guys out on the edge, and you can allow Carson Beck to do anything in the passing game as well. You don't have to force Carson Beck to get down the field. He can throw a little 4 or 5 yard hitch route and convert for a first down. You can move Carson Beck on the run. You can roll the pocket out. You can get him in a play action passing game. You don't want to be facing this Georgia offense in 3rd and 5 or under. Really, 3rd and 7 or under, because you look at their conversion rate. Last year, Georgia number 1 in the country in third down conversions. This year haven't been as efficient, and part of that is because both Clemson and Kentucky force Georgia into long 3rd downs. Now, of course, you've got to play good defense on 1st and 2nd down. And what did Kentucky do? Kentucky held Georgia to 102 yards rushing on the day. And they did that by penetrating gaps, getting into the backfield, disrupting ball carriers before they really got going, got on track. Trevor Etienne and Nate Frazier kind of having a couple of negative plays, and really you get the screen passes out to the outside. They get tackled for a loss as well, and you see Kentucky play really, really good ball pursuing defense. Clemson did it a little bit, not enough. Georgia ultimately cracked that nut and beat their doors in as the game got on. But Kentucky did it the entire game. Kentucky was penetrating gaps along the offensive line. Doesn't that sound familiar? Isn't that exactly what Kane Womack calls for? Okay, everybody's responsible for one gap, but Kentucky was really getting in gaps, and they were getting upfield. They were getting upfield, disrupting the Georgia ball carriers and disrupting the Georgia offensive line. Georgia losing offensive lineman Tate Ratledge in that Kentucky game, and it will be unavailable for this upcoming game. And so you've got an opportunity to take that from the Kentucky game and force Georgia into 3rd and long. That's really the key here. Force Georgia into 3rd and longs. You look at last year's game in 2023, Georgia in 3rd and 7 or more 4 times, right? How many times did Alabama get off the field on those 3rd downs? All 4 times. all 4 times. And so, I mean, look, I know it's a slugfest over there in Atlanta, and I know this is this is logic 101. You could say this about any team. Put them in 3rd and long, they're going to struggle to convert. But you just cannot allow Georgia into 3rd and short situations because of the options that they have. They can get right downhill on you. We just covered all these. They can get into the passing game in multiple different ways. You want to force them into it's 3rd and 7, it's 3rd and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, longer, and you're passing the football. You're passing the football. You're calling a draw. You're calling a screen, and you're kind of just rolling the dice and seeing what will happen, right? You're passing the football down the field, or you're basically conceding by running a draw, running a screen, and seeing if you can slip one through the defense. That's where you want to live. You want to make Mike Bobo, have to live in the 3rd and long plays because you'll know what he's doing a lot easier. He won't have near as many options, and you'll be able to get after the passer up front, which Alabama has done fairly well this season. Georgia, I think, is only given up 2 sacks, I think is what I saw, and both those sacks coming against Kentucky. There's some things that Kentucky's defensive front did that I think Alabama's defensive front already does that might play into Saturday's matchup. My next key for the game, and something else that you notice on film, is Georgia doesn't turn the football over. Georgia didn't turn the football over against Kentucky. It didn't really turn it over against Clemson. And so I think there was maybe 1 fumble. But really, Alabama, it's been a point of emphasis for Kane Womack. It's been a point of emphasis for Kalen DeBoer. Alabama hasn't turned the ball over much. You've had, 2 Jalen Milroe lost fumbles. You lost a fumble against South Florida on the goal line on the snap, and you lost a fumble on the overhead snap against Western Kentucky. So you lost 2 fumbles, but Jalen Milroe hasn't thrown any interceptions. Now, Jalen hasn't really put the ball into too many dangerous situations, but you've done a positive job not turning the football over. Kane Womack's been emphasizing getting the football back. I think it's very, very important on Saturday night to at least be net neutral. Don't lose the turnover battle. Don't be at 4-1, right? You can't be giving the football away. You can't be having any bad snaps. Hopefully you got the bad snaps out of your system over the first 3 weeks. And you're protecting the football. Jalen Milroe continues to protect the football. Now, the first couple of weeks, there were still a couple of issues in the pocket with Jalen Milroe's ball protection, leaving the ball down at his hips, kind of holding it like a loaf of bread as he's escaping. There have been a couple times where it's been a little dicey. Georgia's going to test you in that area. And so I think it's going to be very, very important if Alabama wants to win, for them to win the turnover battle. Now, Georgia, when I think about turnovers that I saw on tape, I immediately go to Malachi Starks. You're going to have to be extra careful in the passing game. Malachi Starks made an amazing interception against Clemson. If you haven't seen it, it was one of the plays of the first weekend where he is falling back away, reminiscent of the old Odell Beckham catch. Now, it wasn't one-handed like Odell Beckham in his famous highlight, but he was falling away down the sidelines and just kind of made a very ridiculous catch on an interception to take the football away from Clemson. So they're a capable defense. You're just going to have to be careful on Saturday with the football, and I think that it's going to be an extra emphasis with Georgia and their capabilities. The other thing that I thought, really, when I saw Georgia on film against Clemson and Kentucky last night, was just the fact that I thought that Georgia was holding back against Kentucky in particular. Not as much against Clemson. I think they started to figure out what Clemson was doing on 3rd down and what Clemson was doing defensively, and they started to attack that very nicely. And because of that, Kane Womack, I think, is going to have to keep it very multiple, keep it very mixed up. Because I think if you're continually calling the same defense on 3rd and long, the 3rd and longs that we just highlighted earlier, Carson Beck's going to burn you. Carson Beck burned Clemson on that as the game wore on. He ended up getting several big plays in the passing game for a couple of those conversions. So you're going to have to keep it mixed up. But for Georgia, I felt like they were holding back. I felt like there was an opportunity to be more creative against Kentucky. Now, my father yesterday on the program said, okay, Georgia historically struggles in Lexington at night. I think that there was a small element of we don't want to show all our cards. We can whip these guys. We can whip these guys with this set of plays, and we're just going to go out there and do it. And then ultimately they did. And I think that they proved Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo correct. Now, look, any coach is going to say that's ridiculous. That's not what we did. That's not our game. But I think that there was a little bit of we can get these guys while keeping some of our bullets in the chamber, because there was not as much. They got Arian Smith involved on both plays in the first play, the first half, and the first play of the second half, right? But they didn't get Arian Smith involved as much as I think that they might have liked. I don't think they got him involved as much as they will on Saturday. There was just some opportunities. Nate Frazier didn't get involved in the game near as much as I thought he would. Now, obviously, Trevor Etienne has taken over as the lead running back now that he's back from suspension. But I really like what I saw out of Nate Frazier in the first week. And so I think that maybe, while we've been asking the question to Kalen DeBoer, how much is left in the Alabama tank? How much is left in the Alabama offensive tank? I think that Georgia didn't show near what they are capable of against Kentucky. And so because of that, I think that Alabama really needs to be on its P's and Q's defensively in this game. I think that Georgia's going to roll out a lot of things that they haven't shown on film, that they didn't show on film against Clemson and Kentucky, and it's going to be just a matter of making adjustments from the booth, communicating them down to the sideline, and getting in the right defenses and trying to make it tough on Carson Beck to force him into third and longs. All right, so my last key, we go force Georgia into third and longs. We go win the turnover battle, and we have to have Alabama stay on schedule as well. It's so simple. These are the simplest keys in the world, but it is a matter of winning the game. If you want to win the game, you have to stay on schedule. And what happens here? Georgia's opponents on 3rd and 7, right? Clemson went 1 of 8. 3rd and 7 or more, 3rd and long. Clemson went 1 of 8, and Kentucky went 2 of 8. Now, Kentucky on 3rd down, what did I see? They were 9 of 16, right? They're 9 of 16 in the game. So this is how simple it is. 9 of 16, you are 2 of 8 on 3rd and 7 or more, 3rd and long. You are what? What is that math? It's simple. Even a journalist can do it. You're 7 of 8 on 3rd and 6 and fewer. Right? So it's so simple. If you want to stay on the field, you've got to make sure that you are 3rd and 6 or fewer. You've got to stay on schedule in that fashion. You cannot line up on 3rd down and see a number 7 on the dial on the yard marker, right? It's plain and simple. It's a matter of, do you want to score points or not? Do you want to keep the offense on the field or not? Because what's that math? 3 of 16 against Power 4 opponents. And okay, I do think that Alabama's offense is better than Clemson's. I do think that Alabama's offense is better than Kentucky's. But you put yourself in 3rd and 7 against this defense. Sure, there is still some getting to know you, but we do know Michael Williams, who's questionable for the game. We do know Malachi Starks. You do know Smile Munden. There are guys out there that you've seen over the course of a couple of years playing for Georgia. It's still a Georgia defense. It's still a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann defense. They're going to get after you. You cannot be in 3rd and 7. I find it remarkable that Kentucky stays in the game by basically going 7 of 8 on 3rd downs in situations where it's 3rd and 6 or fewer. It just makes it that black and white to me. And Jalen Milroe, I believe, in the 2024 game, Alabama was terrible on 3rd down anyways. Let me see. I wrote it last night. Alabama practice report. Nope. Right there. Run the ball, gap integrity. That's great. Whoop-de-doo. Bulldogs prepare. Yeah. 4 3rd and long situations last year. Yep. Yeah. Do I have last year's number? Alabama's offense. No, I didn't put last year's number. Georgia. All right, this makes for great radio. Thanks for tuning in while I look for that number that didn't exist. But I thought I counted it last night. That how many times that Alabama converted on third and long situations in last year's game? I think it was like 0. And so you got to stay on the field. You got to move the football on first down. You got to move the football on second down and keep yourself at least in 3rd and 6. What's that? That's 2 yards of play. 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6, 2 yards of play. It's going to be simple as that to give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance to put Jalen Milroe's legs into action. You saw kind of Brock Vandergrift get after Georgia a little bit with that this past weekend. I think, or 2 weekends ago. I think a little bit of that was kind of Georgia saying, "We'll give you that, Brock. We'll let you kind of." Look, we're going to cover everything up. We're going to cover big plays. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case on Saturday. I think that Georgia's going to be coming after Jalen Milroe and trying to leave a spy somewhere on the line as they're twisting defensive linemen, as they're stunting, as they're trying to come at him from all angles, making it difficult for him to process information quickly. And that's really what it's going to come down to for Jalen Milroe. If he can process information quickly, Alabama can stay on schedule. They can keep the defense fresh. The defense can stay fresh. They can play well on 1st and 2nd down, thus getting turnovers and getting Georgia into 3rd and longs and having a successful night. I think it's that simple. It was a lot of fun to watch Georgia play Clemson and play Kentucky. You can read my article right there on BamaCentral.com. 5 things from film that'll factor into the Georgia-Alabama matchup. Published it this morning for BamaCentral.com. Alabama Crimson Tide on SI. And I appreciate that if you gave me one click and a scroll with your thumb. All right, we're going to keep it going with basically players to watch. I got 3 Alabama players to watch, and I've got a handful of Georgia players that make me nervous. You've already heard a couple of their names, but we will go back to them. While also sandwiching in between, we love a great sandwich, the injury report that looks very, very fishy. It might be a fish sandwich because it looks unusual, at least from the Alabama perspective. But before we do that, I need to tell you about Derek Daniel at State Farm. You can find him right there off of McFarland Boulevard, at 4604 Highway 69 North, right here in Northport, Alabama. I just was over at his office this morning, checking it out, seeing Red Reese in Victoria. They have a great facility. You can call him if you'd rather just call him, 205-758-3391 for all of your insurance needs. Derek Daniel, you got to make sure that you have the right home, life, and auto insurance, especially in this climate. Goodness gracious, you need to make sure that you're prepared for any of life's emergencies. We talk about storms with Purple Turtle Roofing. Storms can hit in any facet of life, so make sure you're prepared with proper insurance. Home life, auto insurance, renter's insurance, they can take care of you at Derek Daniel State Farm. You can call them at 205-758-3391. Like a good neighbor, Derek Daniel and State Farm is there. All right, let's keep it going with 3 Alabama players to watch in this matchup against Georgia. And we've done this the last couple of weeks where for each of the games, and we've done pretty well. We've usually hit about a 2 out of 3 rate. 2 guys have a good game, and one of the guys, doesn't do terrible, but doesn't stand out as much. We're going back to the well, though. Usually I like to kind of keep things fresh and pick a new 3, but I'm going to a guy who I picked against Wisconsin, so 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's a fresh slate since Alabama had a bye week. Maybe I'll get a reset on all my picks. But I'm going to Jam Miller, Alabama running back Jam Miller, because when Georgia played Kentucky, let me pull up our Georgia-Kentucky stats, because Kentucky had a running back. I want to give this guy his proper due because he was running his tail off. Dime Sumo Karnbay took 22 handoffs for Kentucky for 98 yards, 4.5 yards of carry. His longest of the night was just 12 yards. So it wasn't explosive, I think he was fairly explosive, at least from the tape. I think Georgia's defense is just that good to where your longest carry is 12 yards. I think it's going to be a big night for Jam Miller. Why? Because Jam Miller has been the engine in the Alabama rushing room. I mean, we've talked about the running room before, about how deep it is. And really, I mean, it is still deep on paper, but you look at it, and yeah, that's what I want right there. You look at it, Jam Miller is out rushing, rushing yards, bam, is out rushing everybody on the team with 265 yards. Of course, you're going to have Jalen Miller with 156. Your next guy, he's out rushing Justice Haynes by 100 yards on 10 more carries. Justice with 165, and then you got a bunch of the guys coming up behind him, the mop-ups. Kevin Riley with 26, Daniel Hill with 37, Richard Young with 24 yards. It's basically been the Jam Miller show with a little Justice Haynes sprinkled in between. And if you take away the Justice Haynes, what was his long run against Western Kentucky? 80-something yards, right? If you take that away, what's that? What does that leave him with? 18 carries for what's 85 from that's 100, that's 20. So you're at 80 yards, right? You're at 18 carries for 80 yards for Justice Haynes without that run. Now, you can't take that run away because he did score that long touchdown in the season opener. But it's basically been Jam Miller and friends running the football. Jam Miller with Jalen Milroe kind of being the Robin role, the quarterback run role. Obviously, it's still the running back in the backfield with taking the load. And I think that this Sumo Karnbay for Kentucky showed Alabama that, okay, you get an athletic running back, a guy that's got some speed. Sumo Karnbay had some speed, but he also had a little bit of power. I think Jam Miller's got more power than Sumo Karnbay. I think he's a better running back than Sumo Karnbay. I think he is going to be really Alabama's key. We talk about staying on schedule in the first part of the show, and I think that's so crucial for the offense. I mean, I cannot overemphasize it enough. You have to get into 3rd and 5. You have to get into 3rd and 2, right? You have to stay on schedule. And I think that Jam Miller is the key to doing that. The running game is the key to doing that. Now, Georgia, really good rushing defense. Really good rushing defense so far this season. But you have to stay on schedule, and Jam Miller is that guy, so he is my pick. I'm going back to the well and making Jam Miller a back-to-back pick on our 3 players to watch. We're going to keep it going by flipping to the defensive side of the football, and we're taking Malachi Moore. I don't think there is a more important defender on the field for Alabama than Malachi Moore, because he sets the defense on the back end. He sets the secondary on the back end, and really, he's a headhunter. And he's a headhunter on the edge. Georgia has some players, we'll talk about in just a little bit, that can get onto the edge quickly. And that Georgia utilized a lot of swing passes, a lot of split screens, a lot of wide receiver screens, a lot of bubble passes in the first weeks. In the first week against Clemson, and then the third week against Kentucky. Used a lot of, we're hitting on the outside. And Malcolm Moore is going to be really, really, really important for coming up to the line of scrimmage and making tackles on fast, athletic players. So I don't know what's more important. Malachi Moore in his brain, setting the defense into the right coverages and into the right checks. Obviously, Deontay Lawson is going to be our green dot guy, but or Malachi Moore's body and his tackling ability on the edge. I think that Malachi Moore is the unquestioned leader of this defense. I think maybe not always the most vocal leader. I think he can get vocal and does get vocal, but I'm really, really excited. I think he's going to have to be very important for Alabama's efforts. If he doesn't have a good game, then I think Alabama's going to have a hard time winning on Saturday night. And number 3, I'm kind of going to cheat just a little bit. I'm taking Caden Proctor. Okay, we're leaving that right off the rip. I think Caden Proctor is going to be very, very important in this game. It's going to be his first SEC game. It's all guys' first SEC game, right? So we can't make that an argument for Caden Proctor to stand out in this game or to be important in this game. But you can look across into the defensive line and see Michael Williams, who may or may not play, listed as questionable. But you see Michael Williams and the defensive front, the Georgia aggressive defense, and Caden Proctor is going to have a good game. He's going to have a good game protecting Jalen Milroe's blind side, defending the edge. Let's see. There was another defender that stood out on tape. It'll see when I pop up there. Michael Williams, Nasir Stackhouse, 78. Chaz Chambliss, no, it wasn't. It was Damon Wilson. Damon Wilson, really, really a talented pass rusher off the edge. Was getting after it against Clemson and Kentucky. I thought that he's going to probably be lined right up there on Caden Proctor in some snaps. You also have Tyron Ingram Dawkins coming off the edge if Michael Williams can't go. So I'm picking Caden Proctor, but I'm going to cheat and bend a little bit. I think the whole offensive line needs to be considered as the third most important player of the game, maybe the most important player of the game, but one of the players to watch in this game. If the offensive line protects Jalen Milroe, if the offensive line opens up holes for Jam Miller, for Justice Haynes, if the offensive line is able to dictate pace and physicality to Georgia, then you should feel comfortable in this game. But if you get the offensive line that showed up against South Florida, now the personnel was different, but if you get the offensive line that showed up against South Florida, then it's going to be a long night in Bryant-Denny Stadium for the Alabama fans. It's going to be a long night for those trying to see Alabama win that game. Jalen Milroe will be under duress. You're not going to be able to run the ball. You're going to be in third and longs. You're going to be seeing a lot of James Burnip. And while he's super talented, and that's great, we love seeing him, you don't want to see too much of him. Maybe once or twice for James Burnip, not 6, 7, 8 times like he might if the Alabama offensive line struggles on Saturday. All right, so those are my 3 players of the game. I'm going Jam Miller, I'm going Malachi Moore, and I'm going Caden Proctor, but I'm going Caden Proctor with a caveat for the whole offensive line. All right, 2 more things for us today on a Thursday on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Appreciate everybody for your giving me a follow at Joe Gaither 6 on whatever your favorite platform is. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, really any of your favorite platforms. You can find me at Joe Gaither 6. But let's talk about this injury report. It's the first week for Alabama to submit an injury report for the SEC. And okay, that's cool. We appreciate more information. We appreciate knowing about the game. We appreciate knowing a couple of people who are out. Georgia lets you know that running back Roderick Robinson is out. London Humphreys, wide receiver, is out. Tate Ratledge, offensive lineman, is out. And then you got a couple guys listed as questionable. Michael Williams on the defensive line. Some people say that he is going to be out. You see Sekovi White, wide receiver, questionable. I'm not really familiar with him. Jordan Hall, Warren Brinson. Jordan Hall also listed as questionable, with Warren Brinson listed as probable. All right, great. I don't know enough about Georgia's team to go any further than that. Thank you, Kirby, for your report. But let's look at this Alabama report. Quay Russaw, linebacker, probable. Richard Young, running back, probable. Jeremiah Alexander, linebacker, probable. Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. But if you know Alabama's team, if you've been covering Alabama, or if you're paying attention, like I know you listeners and I know you viewers are, you should have some question marks around this injury report. What's going on here? Quay Russaw, probable. All right, I think that's true. Richard Young, probable. Man, that would shock me. But great. That'd be great. Jeremiah Alexander, probable. It's about the right timeline for him to be back from his fall camp injury. He had an upper arm injury, shoulder, arm kind of thing early in fall camp. It's about the right time for him. But and so we're not questioning any of these 3 players. And okay, you look back at last week or 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin, and you saw Malachi Moore go out with a head injury, and obviously he's not listed there, so you infer that he is playing. Well, let me tell you, yesterday in the facility, we saw Malachi Moore as they were wrapping up practice. Obviously, we weren't sitting there. It was kind of the end of practice. I don't want to say screw around period, but yeah, the practice was over. Everybody's walking around kind of, I'm getting the end of practice vibes, but he was there. Great. All right. That's not a problem that he's not there. Jalen Hale, is he going to play in the game? Is he available? Is Jalen Hale available? Anybody know? Oh, no. I think Jalen Hale's still recovering from a very serious leg injury in spring practice. Okay. He's out for the game. He should be listed. Where's Cole Adams? Anybody? Cole Adams? Haven't seen him for 2 weeks. Cole Adams? Anybody? Any Cole Adams? Look, if he's available, great. If he's going to be returning punts, that's great news for Alabama. But we saw his arm hyperextend. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but looked like a hyperextension against South Florida. Put the arm out on the ground, and the elbow went through it the other way for just a second. The elbow got turned. Not a fun picture. So Cole Adams, that was what, 3 weeks ago? Is he back? He's going to be available, returning punts for you? Okay. There's just a little funny business, it seems like, with the Alabama injury report. So, it looks fine on the surface, just like Georgia's looks fine. But I don't know Georgia football well enough to talk about guys that may not be listed or guys who should be listed with different designations. Maybe you list Cole Adams and you say probable, right? Great. Perfect designation. Thank you, Coach. But Jalen Hale, come on, you got to put him on here. List him as out, right? But here's the deal: got to cut him some slack. Cut the Crimson Tide a little slack here because it's the very first one. I don't really think that Kalen DeBoer is a playing games with the injury report type. I don't really think that he is playing games with the opposition as far as who's available type coach. So I do kind of chalk these errors or these kind of funny, I don't want to say they're errors because maybe there's something going on that I don't know. We'll take that into consideration. But these kind of questions that pop up from the injury report, we'll take these questions and file them under. This was just the first time that Alabama had to file. Next week, Jalen Hale will probably be on there listed as out, and hopefully that'll be the only injury listed. Hopefully both Alabama and Georgia make it through Saturday night's game clean, both sides, and they can continue on through conference play injury free. All right, last thing for the day. We appreciate everybody watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon. We appreciate Derek Daniel at State Farm for sponsoring the program, Purple Turtle Roofing for sponsoring the program, Druid City Music Hall as well. But we got to talk about some of these Georgia offensive players that make me nervous. First time watching Clemson and Kentucky games, I see Georgia, and obviously they scored, 33, 35 points against Clemson, only 13 against Kentucky. Bad offense, not good offense against Kentucky. And I'm watching them lazily on Sunday. And I'm like, this offense, there's nothing scary about this offense. Sure, Carson Beck is good, and he is good. He is a surgeon. He is a really, really good decision maker, and he is really, really accurate with the football. Hasn't thrown an interception this year. I do think he's a really good quarterback. Would he be my first pick as a quarterback if I needed one? Probably not. But I do think he's a really, really good quarterback. Really, really talented. But you look at the Kentucky game and you think, okay, what else on this offense? Trevor Etienne looks like he's a complete back, but he looked like a back who is still working his way into an offense. You see some explosive plays, and you see a guy who can move the pile a little bit, but looked like a guy who's still working his way into the offense. Kobe Young, the transfer from Miami, not really that intimidating to me. Obviously gets the touchdown pass against Clemson on the little fade ball down on the goal line. I think he's caught 2 touchdowns for Georgia so far this season. I've got it actually right there. Yeah, what am I receiving? Kobe Young, 5 receptions, 41 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him on the season. So, look, he's gotten into the end zone. But these guys don't make me nervous. Branson Robinson, you don't make me nervous. You've been one of the prominent ones showing up on tape with the negative runs. You can watch all of Georgia's 1 yard or fewer runs against Clemson and Kentucky right there on my Twitter. But Branson Robinson is the main one carrying the football in all those clips. Not concerned about him. Who I'm concerned about, who makes me nervous, is Arian Smith and Dylan Bell. Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, and Nate Frazier are 3 Georgia players who make me nervous. Now, Arian Smith, I think he's wearing number 11. Now, I do love you for that. That's my favorite number. There, file that under your trivia question for Joe Gaither. Arian Smith, 3 games, 1 carry, 7 yards, 11 receptions, 142 yards, and a touchdown. 12 plays from scrimmage, 149 scrimmage yards, 1 touchdown, right? He's a guy that they've gotten out on the edge a handful of different times that looks dangerous. It looks very dangerous in the open field. And you've seen Alabama, especially as the game went on against Wisconsin, and maybe you could attribute it to attrition, But you see in Alabama at times struggle to tackle well, struggle to tackle efficiently. You've had to get 2 or 3, 4 different guys. Now, look, that's just football. You've got great athletes on the field, but Arian Smith looks like a guy who would exploit that, who can exploit that. If you can get him the ball in space, if you can get him the ball you can get him the ball with a crease, I think that presents a very dangerous situation for the Alabama defense. I do think that obviously the Alabama defense is very talented. They've got talented players. They've gotten lots of talented players, lots of talented offensive players to the ground before. I'm not saying that Arian Smith is anything that they haven't seen before, but I do think that he is a top quality player. I do think that he is a very dangerous offensive player. As my cat and dog want to argue between themselves. Going on, Dylan Bell, the same sort of way. I think Dylan Bell is almost a little bit smaller version of Arian Smith. I think he's wearing 86 for Georgia. Let me pull up the tab again. Dylan Bell, 9 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. 1 carry, 27 yards for him. So he's very explosive to me. I think he is really explosive after the catch. And so those two guys catching the football from Carson Beck present challenges to me. And I think that you've seen the Alabama secondary over the course of three weeks get beat a couple of times over the top, get beat on flag routes, get beat on 9 routes, and you've had quarterbacks that weren't able to connect with their intended targets. I think Carson Beck will. And I think if you're able to slot Dylan Bell and Arian Smith into some of these routes that utilize or call for speed, I'm not saying that Xavier Brown's not fast or Damani Jackson, isn't fast. I do think they're very fast. I'm not saying that Red Morgan isn't fast, but I think you've seen sometimes the technique get them, which happens in football. And those two guys, Arian Smith and Dylan Bell, make me very nervous. Now, Nate Frazier is the other guy that makes me nervous when I watch Georgia play Kentucky and Clemson. Not so much against Kentucky, not as good of a game against Kentucky, but a really, really strong game against Clemson. Now, Trevor Etienne wasn't involved in the Clemson game because of suspension, but Nate Frazier in 3 games, 20 carries so far this year, 20 carries, 113 yards, and 1 touchdown, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. He's caught 2 passes for 19 yards, and that's good for 9.5 yards a catch. So, from scrimmage, 22 plays, 132 yards, and a touchdown. That's 6 yards a touch. This kid is a freshman, and he's from Mater Dei. Oh, my gosh. You're going to have a lot of trash talk between Xavier Brown, between Damani Jackson, between the Mater Dei guys, and this guy Nate Frazier. I think that will present a very fun dynamic between the two programs, between the two schools. But I think that Nate Frazier is a guy who can go. He's got that extra gear. He's not as physical as Trevor Etienne, but he was a water bug. Very good at picking his holes and exploding through the holes. And I think that for an Alabama defense that is struggling with its run fits, that presents a huge problem. And so those are 3 guys that I think that if Alabama were to start to feel like it's drowning, if things were going uphill, if the snowball was starting to snowball on the Crimson Tide, I think it'll be because of these 3 players. I think it will be because of Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, and Nate Frazier. So we'll see if Mike Bobo is able to utilize those guys on Saturday night. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to talk some more with you tomorrow on the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. We appreciate everybody who's watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel and everybody who checked us out on my own social media platforms at Joe Gaither 6 or listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon. We'll get out of here by telling you about Druid City Music Hall. They're the premier place for live music on the Strip. You can check them out online at druidcitymusichall.com. See their entire lineup, druidcitymusichall.com/shows. They got a show tomorrow night. It's already sold out. Gavin Adcock is performing with special guest Vincent Mason. So hopefully you've been listening and you already got your ticket. If not, you are SOL, or you might be buying one on the street. Next week, more shows. Thursday, October 3rd, Josiah Queen. Friday, October 4th, Quarters of Change. both performing at Druid City Music Hall. You can check them out. And I'm particularly excited about October 9th, Wednesday, October 9th, Red Baron coming to town. You need to check him out. Mix of Morgan Wallen, mix of Kid Rock, mix of kind of Florida Georgia line, a little bit of a little interesting sound there. I think a lot of the college age crowd might enjoy Red Baron on Wednesday, October 9th. So check them out at Druid City Music Hall. And you can check out all the shows at druidcitymusichall.com/shows. We'll get out of here for the day, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.